Okay, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. I am very happy to be joined by Mr. Greg Kuehn of T.S.O.L. Greg, how's it going, man?
Really good. Hey, Joel. Thanks for having me on. This is gonna be fun. Looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
yeah, we got a lot to talk about, including
Right.
something very special going on with you in a few days' time. But to go all the way back, I realized when I was getting ready to do this with you that Beneath the Shadows, which is your first album with TSOL, is actually 40 years old this year. Um,
Oh, that's great.
so,
Yeah.
a lot's happened in those 40 years.
Right.
So I want to kind of go even before Beneath the Shadows and kind of dive in and ask you first and foremost, um, uh, when did playing music and how did playing music first become part of your life?
Well, I mean, I can't remember a time where I didn't play music. My mom tells me I would sit, when I was a toddler, I'd jump on the piano and start banging and stuff. And she was a music teacher and a singer. And so there's a lot of music in the house. And so I just naturally gravitated toward it. I had piano lessons from pretty early on. Like I probably started at five, 4 or 5, I guess. And I had really a teacher who really encouraged me to write my own music from a very early age. And so like at my piano recitals, I would like play my own pieces and stuff. But yeah, I was just really into it from the beginning. Like she would tell me these stories. I can't remember that back that far, being a toddler and banging on the piano. But she said, yeah, that was just the thing. Like I would, always do that. So yeah, so I think it was just, I had the bug early.
Cool. And some of your earliest experiences, from what I understand, were actually at church, right? You were playing church organ, is that correct?
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, that was a little bit later, but yeah, I mean, I would, whatever, sing in the choir, and I would play. Yeah, I play at church. They enlist me to play, like, oh yeah, play keyboard while I play, in church and stuff. And so yeah, I was in the handbell choir too. I remember being like when I was I don't know, 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever. They had these handbells, and so we'd have these handbell choirs, which is really a beautiful instrument and sounds amazing. And you have to really play in sync with people because you're playing two notes of the scale, so like you really have to don't bang bang, so you really have to be in sync with the other players. So that was kind of a fun one. But yeah, but church definitely played a role in my music experience from an early age.
Now, when was your introduction to California punk rock and what effect did that have on you and your musical vocabulary as it was developing?
Yeah, well, I mean, like when stuff started coming out in like 77 or whatever. I mean, I was probably like 14. I was born in 63. So like about 14, and me and my friend Carl, we were lived on my street, and we were just like, what's all this shit? Like, this Ramones, what's this? Let's check this out. And so it really was like just kids in the candy store checking out all the cool new music. I mean, because I was like really into like Zeppelin, and being a keyboard player, I mean, I was like into ELP and Yes and stuff like that too, and Genesis too. You know what I mean? I was open to all that stuff. But then it's like, oh shit, the Damned, like what's this? You know what I mean? Like that was just like mind blowing, and just really kind of made me want to like not necessarily bail on all that other stuff, but it's just like it sort of though, because you really do go, okay, fuck all that. Like I'm really into this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I want to know about all these bands, and I want to hear what's this Stranglers band? Because I love them too. Because there's I love punk bands with keyboards. And it's not like there's more of them than people think. But the Stranglers were a great one. Dave Greenwald, what an amazing keyboard player. And so um so yeah, so that's kind of like at the that's when started to get into stuff, and just and then Rodney on the Rock, man, because we would live in LA, and hearing like his show, we just tune into his show every Sunday night and tape everything, and it's like Black Flag, wow, like the first EP with Keith, and so much great stuff, Middle Class, and that's really where you'd find out, besides the stuff that was imported, for local stuff is like, man, and Rodney played, stuff that was from England too, but so much cool local stuff, that's where you'd hear it first. Then you'd find the flyers and figure out how to go to a show, and start going to punk shows and stuff. So it was funny because I was still studying classical music, and pretty serious about that whole thing, but also like going to punk shows. And I never really saw like as far as that go. I mean, I wanted to be good at playing, and I still enjoyed practicing, and I didn't want to like, you know, bail and all that. But it was fun, like playing Bach fugues and after school, and then going to see whatever, some cool punk show at the Radio City or Cuckoo's Nest was kind of ground zero for me, and that's where I first saw T.S.O.L, because I was going to see them play. I mean, I saw them a few times before I joined, several times actually, and it was great, and it was like, wow, I get to join my favorite local band. You know what I mean? It was
Well,
pretty fun.
it's such an interesting era, obviously, in the band's history, because you come on board doing keyboards, and not just doing keyboards, which is kind of crazy enough for a punk band at that time, but doing keyboards extensively. There's a
Right,
lot of bands, that bring in a keyboard player and you can barely hear them on the album. But
right.
you're in many ways kind of driving the sound of Beneath the Shadows. And it was obvious those guys were all in with
Yeah,
having
yeah, yeah. That
the
was exciting too. Yeah, yeah, it was really cool because they really did, thank God for the Damned, right? Because that's probably, they're always, I was a huge Damned fan. They were a huge Damned fans. The Damned made it okay to have, and it made sense. They kind of like, that's the blueprint. Not to say that it wouldn't have happened without them, but I do thank Captain Dave for like, whenever I see them, I'm like, hey, thanks for paving the way for me. But, because it was like, where do you go from there? I mean, such a great band and made so many cool records, but it's like, well, what else, do you do sonically, So they were ready and I was ready, and it was really a cool sort of meeting of the minds to kind of like, dive right in. And, they were very inclusive and, wanted me to join the band, and we were writing songs together from the very beginning. I mean, it was just like, what do you got? Oh, cool. I got this cool little bit, and cool, add this other bit and do this. And it was really a collaborative experience, and but to walk into a band like that, I mean, God, Todd's such a powerful drummer, and Ron's Ron's such a legendary guitarist. I mean, it's like he's one of a kind, and to get to play and work and write with him and all the guys, I mean, they were just such a great unit, and played so well together, to get to just step into that thing, and Jack singing and the lyrics. And I mean, it's just, it was just a dream, for 18-year-old kid, And it was funny because I had just finished my first year at Cal State Long Beach as a classical piano major. And then it was like, okay, well, I want to do this, and we're going to make a record and go on tour. So I'm going to not do this now. You know what I mean? It was like, this is what I really want to do. I mean, this other thing is just, because it's like, well, it's not like I wanted to be a concert pianist, but I mean, I did want to be good, you know what I mean? And it was like, well, I was good enough to do that and get a scholarship and whatever, and go to Cal State Long Beach and study with a really cool teacher and take theory and all that stuff. So it was cool, but it was like, not, this was what I really wanted to do. So I was like, okay, I'm out.
And you were what, 20 when you
No, 18. I was
18?
18. Yeah, yeah. And I was kind of young for my school. I graduated when I was 17. So I turned 18 in my first year of college, and then joined T.S.O.L when I was still 18. Yeah. And then turned 19 soon after. My birthday's in November. So, and I joined like in the summer of 82.
Well, 82 to say 84, when you look at
Mm,
the LA punk bands and what they were putting out musically, there was a lot of change. Classic
right.
example would be side two of Black Flag's My War.
Right. Right.
So people were trying different things, and you guys really tried different things on
Right.
Beneath the Shadows. What was the reaction like when all of a sudden you're a five piece and you're playing
Oh,
Forever?
there's a lot of people that didn't get it for sure. There's a lot of people that didn't like it. There was a lot of pushback, but there are also a lot of people that really did dig it, and people that were very supportive. I mean, that were just like, dude, this is the best thing they've ever done. Like, you're stoked. I'm so glad that you're in this, and this is fucking with people, and this is great. You know what I mean? So it was like, in my world, it was like people were very cool about it, but sure, there's always going to be grumbling. You know what I mean? When the band makes the Black EP, and then you wind up at this, not that long after, it's hard, that's a lot for people to absorb and take. And so it's like, whatever, man, if it's not your cup of tea, it's fine. But that's what the band had to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really a choice. You don't, you know, especially working with Jack for so long, it's like, you can't worry about what people think or try to repeat yourself or whatever. You have to do what's exciting. You got to do what makes sense and what feels like the next step. And whatever. It's like, if people don't dig it, that's not your problem. You just, I mean, it's not ideal, but at the same time, it's like, well, this is the record we had to make, whatever. It's like, so that's what we did. That's what felt right to everybody. Those are the songs that mattered. That's what all of us felt like should happen. So that's what happened. So you can't really, it's a real drag to second guess artistically of what people are going to think or whatever. It's just, I mean, it's inevitable that you do a little bit, but it's like, you just can't stop that wave when five people are working on something together and excited about it. It's like, it's not going to change no matter what somebody says. Oh yeah, you guys should be careful because it's maybe not punk rock enough. It's like, fuck you, we're doing this thing. Like, this is a moving train. Like, we're all on board with this shit, and this is a thing that's happening, and we're putting it together, and there's no stopping it. So we made the record we kind of had to make.
Excellent. And
Yeah.
the train shortly thereafter moved in different directions.
Yeah.
It was really Mike and Ron left,
Yeah.
shortly after the rest of you guys moved on. They moved on with different players as T.S.O.L. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were part of the very earliest version of Cathedral of Tears with Jack, right? And
I
Jay.
was. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we did that for a while. I mean, I wasn't on the EP that was on Enigma. There's a 4-song demo thing that's floating around. We did a 7-inch of that recently. And yeah, the problem with Cathedral, for me, the problem with Cathedral of Tears, because we started that band, and that was, we wrote all the songs together and everything, but I was playing with Bob Dylan at the time concurrently. And so it was just a little bit of a conflict, you know what I mean? I mean, I wanted to do both, but for whatever reason, there was some, animosity about me doing both things. And so, I eventually was like, well, I can't not do this gig, you know what I mean? I have to do this. And I want to do both, but it's like, if you're telling me to choose, it's like, well, I gotta be at Bob's at 5, so it's like, whatever, man, so that's kind of how that went. Unfortunately, actually, because I love Cathedral, it was super fun. I enjoyed those songs, and I love working with Jack, and it was just one of those things where it was just, kind of, it was time to move on, I guess.
Yeah, like which one?
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to have to make those decisions, but whatever. It was
And
a cool. It was cool.
Jay Bentley from Bad Religion was part of that too at that time, right?
He was, yeah, in the very early days, before we were playing too many shows. He never played shows with us, but because we did do a lot, played out a bunch, but yeah, Jay was in the early version of that, and that was super fun because I love Jay, and he's great, man. And he had filled in for Roach on a couple of T.S.O.L shows when in that era too, before we left or they left or whatever the fuck happens, you know what I mean?
Um,
But
how did the Dylan thing come about? Because that's such a wild leap, you
I
know.
know, it's crazy. I had this friend, Pamela Douglas, who was from the punk scene, and her dad was Stephen Douglas, who played sax for Dylan.
Mm.
And so he was like, they're looking for a keyboard player for this video they're doing. It's for Sweetheart Like You. And so, from Infidels, which is a great record,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a
yeah, totally.
great song too. And so it's like, well, sure, yeah, I'll go up there. And I was like, she wanted to get some younger guys or whatever, and some punk dudes or whatever, or guys from the scene. And so, I mean, I'm punk rock keyboard player guys. So Pam hooked me up with that, and I went to the, you go down to the thing, and then you get cast or whatever. And so I'm in that video. It's online and stuff. It's pretty funny. I'm like, all of 19 probably at that point, and So it was just that, it was just a video shoot at first, but then Bob's like, hey, you should come up to the house, because I have my piano up there and I'm playing around in between takes and stuff like that. And Charlie Quintana was on that video too, and I love the Plugs, man. I didn't know him, but the Plugs were fucking great, man. And first punk show I ever saw was the Plugs, and down in Irvine. There was the Plugs, the Crowd, and Agent Orange with Steve Soto playing bass, who I knew, who I'm old friends with because we went to church camp together, Quaker Meadows church camp. We both went to Quaker church, and so we met at Quaker Meadows like when we were like 11 or 12, and went up there a couple of years, and then we both wound up in the punk scene. And so, and I went to that. Funny enough, I went to that show with Tony Adolescent, who was my pal from junior high. We went to Dale Junior High together, and so that was right before the Adolescents, because Steve was still playing bass in Agent Orange. So anyway, so that was my first punk show, was seeing the Plugs with those guys, and the Crowd I love too, forever, man. I just love them so much. And so so actually it's funny because, like, sure, you get to meet Bob Dylan, but I get to meet Charlie from the Plugs, man. It's like, so that's pretty cool. Yeah. So when we were hanging out doing the shooting and got to know each other and stuff. And yeah, so Bob said, you guys should come up to the house. And so next thing you know, we're like part of his house band. And so I drive from Orange County and pick Charlie up in Hollywood, and we drive up to Malibu and go jam with Bob, man. And we'd have it was a bunch of different kind of music, different players coming in. Tony Marsico from the Plugs was also played bass up there for a while, and we'd have different guitar players and stuff. But me and him were part of this kind of like house band for a while, and we played some shows or whatever. It was just kind of a weird gig, because it wasn't really like an official thing, but we recorded some stuff and play a little bit and just go up and just go jam with Bob. That was kind of the gig. Pretty trippy.
To be more specific, jam with Charlie and Bob's there. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Charlie
on
drums,
Oh my God, he's such a great drummer, man. And then we wound up, I wound up playing with him on a lot of other stuff too, because the Plugs were into a lot of cool stuff, and they did the music for Repo Man, and so then they brought me in on that, and so all that crazy synth and emulator stuff with the strings and the choirs and all that. That's all me. That's me playing all that stuff on that score. So that was pretty fun to get to do a lot of stuff with those guys. Yeah, they were great.
And I'm going to bang the drum forever about the Plugs, because
so good.
I was listening to Electrify Me the other day, the album, and man, first of all, it's a masterclass in musicianship.
Yeah, totally.
And number two, there's such an energy and a bounce to that record, and Charlie's drumming in particular. I mean, talk about, if there's a Mount Rushmore of LA punk, people go, yeah, Black Flag, T.S.O.L. Put the fucking Plugs up there too.
Oh, I agree. They were so good. I mean, just amazing. Yeah, really good. And Charlie was such Tito's great too. Barry at that point, but then they got Tony Marsico on bass after, and then Steve Hufstetter was on guitar before they became the Cruzados, and always great. I mean, but the original version of the Plug was amazing, man. I mean, Charlie's just such a great drummer, man, and just really, yeah, he's such a joy to play with, man. He just carries the whole thing, and you're just like, oh shit, I don't have to, when you play with a great drummer, man, it really does free you up, because you're not having to just playing on, they're just floating you along, man. Todd was like that too, because he's so powerful and just drive everything along in such a cool way. Such a thunderous drummer, man. It's really a joy to play with great drummers.
Yeah, and although Charlie and Todd sadly are both gone now, we've got those records that we can refer to, and
yeah, totally.
Charlie did a massive stint in Social Distortion too, so
right.
He was a big part of that. So, but yeah, I'm a drummer myself, and when I need to be inspired, Charlie on, and
that's a good place to go, man. Yeah, and super cool guy too, man. Just like really, just so enthusiastic and so excited about stuff, and just I don't know, man, just really, really cool. We were pretty close for a while there, and I really dug hanging out with him, and we were about the same age, but he just seemed, what I mean, because he was young. I mean, we were really like almost exactly the same age, but he seemed so much older because he'd been in the scene for a lot longer, and he was just so much more experienced and stuff. He's like a big brother, show me the ropes, even though we were basically the same age. But he was super cool. And he got me in on a lot of sessions and stuff. He'd recommend me on things, and we'd play on a bunch of different stuff, soundtracks and things, and whatever. He was so good that he was like a on-call session guy. Like, people don't realize how many sessions he played on, but he did a lot of stuff, man. And he would drag me in on stuff and recommend me and things. And so we played on a lot of records and stuff together, different, weird things like, oh yeah, there's a session at A&M. We got to do 2 songs for a movie or whatever. It's like, I'm going to get you in on it. It's like, wow, okay, cool. Get me in on a union scale session, It
Right
happened a
on.
lot. Cool dude.
Right on. I know we're bouncing around a lot. There's a lot of things to kind of hit on. Um, Around this time, perhaps shortly thereafter, you end up playing in the band Berlin, and you play in Berlin really when that band was at its absolute peak. This is the era of Take Your Breath Away or Take My Breath Away and the Top Gun soundtrack. You kind of can't get bigger than that.
Yeah, that
But
was crazy. But before that, I will say before we jump to all that way there, right after the Dylan thing, I played with the church,
mm,
and yeah, and that was when the first time they came over here. Remote Luxury was the record,
mm,
and I toured with them in the States, and that was a lot of fun. And then we got to be friends, and then I wound up playing Starfish under the Milky Way and all that stuff, and that was pre Berlin. Although, yeah, I'm trying to think if maybe Starfish was after Berlin, because I knew them, and I'd see them when they came through town. But then whatever. Anyway, so that I did play with the church for a
now,
while before Berlin.
and the church is like one of my top five favorite bands.
It's so great. I
And
love them.
I know Marty, and Marty's a trip
Yeah,
and
Marty's great, man.
a real musicologist. He gets
Oh,
it.
dude, his website is insane. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
so gnarly. Yeah, I mean, he really does connect all the dots. Yeah, he's great. And I
uh,
was 20 playing with them, and then I remember we were in Chicago recently, and I was like, oh man, it's like I forget I turned 21 on the road with the church. When I so I was just at the Metro. We were playing at the Metro, and we were just in Chicago playing, and for some reason that all came back. I was like, oh wow, that's cool. I turned 21 in this town. So yeah, so that was super fun to play with them because I really like them a lot. Man, there's some of those early church records, the Blurred Crusade and
oh,
Seance, and well, Seance especially. And then yeah, but yeah, they're such a great band with such a cool history. And then get to play on their big record, big American record too. It's pretty neat.
well, that record and the entire Starfish album, I believe,
Yeah.
was produced by Waddy Wachtel.
Yeah. Wadi and Greg Ledania, the two guys, those two guys produced it.
And I've talked to Waddy in the past, and I've
Uh,
interviewed him, and he's another one, man. It just
yeah,
he's one of those
he does
guys.
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
What was the experience like working with Waddy kind of in the producer's chair for that record?
It was cool. It's always a little bit weird when you're when the band says this is the guy we want to play. Like normally, like a guy like Waddy, if he's producing that record, he's gonna bring his guys in because they're coming in from Australia or whatever. And so it's always a little bit weird when the band says, "Oh no, we got our friend that we want him to come and play." But he was cool. Like we figured it out. You know what I mean? Like we figured out what would be cool for the record and stuff. But I think you're always a little bit of a disadvantage when there's a producer who's like those guys weren't just like, oh, just a push record type of producers. I mean, they really were actively involved in the arrangements and stuff like that, and they were felt responsible in that way. And so it's just it's not easy sometimes at first just to be that guy, but it was cool though. They were good. I like Waddy. He was cool, man. They were good dudes, and you just go, okay, man, what are we, you prove yourself quickly. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? Like I'll have a take and I'll have some ideas, and a couple of those ideas got shut down, and you go, okay, well, that's okay. We won't do that. Here's another. Here, I got a couple other ideas, and let's try this and let's try that. So you just kind of adapt. But those can be a little bit difficult. Those sort of situations where you're just walking into that sort of situation with people that would normally probably bring their own session cats in or whatever. You know what I mean? But it
Right.
was cool that they did that because Steve was very adamant about like wanting me to play on it. It was like, okay, cool. I mean, I don't know if he had to be adamant, but whatever, they were, sort of definitely wanted me on it. So it was like, okay, cool. I'll go in and figure out how to do some cool stuff for this record.
Cool, cool. Bouncing back to Berlin,
Okay, cool.
because like I said, Take My Breath Away. I mean, that's such a quintessential song, and you were kind of in the mix when all that was kind of blowing up. Um,
Yeah.
but that band, from what I understand, that was kind of near the end of Berlin, at least that incarnation of
Yeah,
Berlin.
that was the record I played on Count Three and Pray. That was the last Berlin record and the last big tour too. But it was cool because it was like, I mean, yeah, we're touring on a number one single, and that was pretty fun. Um, and it was interesting because that record, Count Three and Pray, that was produced by Bob Ezrin, and that was pretty fun to get to work with him. But that was like, what an icon, it's so many cool records. And so yeah, so I did that record tour, and then yeah, but it was fun because we got to go all over the world, and go to weird places. Like we played in Taiwan, which is strange because there was such a because it's like they were real like sort of right wing at that time, like mid like whatever 87 or whatever. It was very, and maybe they still are, I don't know, but it was very like right wing, like kind of like militaristic, aligned with the U.S. Really like rah rah rah. And so if you got the Top Gun song, they didn't have a lot of rock bands coming to play there. You know what I mean? Like they were pretty strict about stuff, like kind of more like what we think about Singapore or something like that, like where it's like super rigid and they're not going to let some crazy rockers come. But we had the Top Gun song, and that was rah rah military thing, and they were all pro America and all that thing. So it's like we got to play there, and it was crazy, man, playing a big stadium show in Taiwan, just like one humongous show with just like thousands and thousands of people there. That was pretty fun. Yeah.
And you were touring, some of it at least, with Frankie Goes to Hollywood, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In Europe, we opened up for Frankie's. And that was super fun because I got to be friends with those guys real quick, man. They were like, come and hang out and party, whatever. Some of the other guys in the band didn't get along with them so well, but they were instantly like, okay, this guy's cool, so I'd play my set with Berlin, and it would be like, then I watch Frankie's set, and they're like, okay, come on, man, we're going out. It was like gnarly, man. Every night, we're playing like 20,000 seat stadiums, and it's like somebody's having a party after this, so that I was just part of the crew, it was just like, let's go hang out. And it's funny because Mark O'Toole, the bass player, and I got to be really good friends, and he was living out here for a while and actually built my studio. He's a really talented carpenter, and he was living at our house, and right when my sons were first born, and or even I think yeah, he was living here when Elvis was born, and then yeah, but he was so cool, man. He built my studio, and I've changed it a little bit since, but basically it's like that's just still got his footprint on it. So but yeah, they were cool. That was really super fun because they were great, man. I mean, it was like not like I mean, they were still really big, but it was like the second album, I forget what's the big hit on that one was. The Two Tribes, maybe, or is that on the first? I get it all mixed up. But
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
they were still really big, and so they were a really good live band too. I mean, it was a powerful show, and their shows were just packed, man, and they were all super cool, and whatever. It was just a really really fun time and a fun tour to be on.
Cool. Just to clear something up, did you play on Take My Breath Away?
No, only Giorgio Moroder played on that song. Funny enough, that was because here's the story I heard, and I'm pretty sure it's true, is that was supposed to be a Terry Nunn solo single,
Mhm.
but then it didn't come out on that, and so as that way, and they sort of just talked her into like, well, let it be a Berlin thing. It'll be on the record, and then sadly, I mean, I think what happened was that wound up being recoupable against Berlin stuff and all that, and so it would have been a humongous hit for her, and set her up for life or whatever. But whatever. She was very cool in that way. I love Terry. She's awesome, and she was super fun to work with, and such a great singer, man. And we would have these moments in this thing where we're kind of like a piano vocal thing, and it was super fun to play with her. She's great. And she's still doing it, which is cool. And I think they recently actually just put it. I think the three original members are back playing together, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw something that John and Dave Diamond and she were playing some shows, so that's good to see. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah, so yeah, Take My Breath Away was supposed to be a Terry solo single and wound up being on the Berlin record. So it was just it's all Giorgio. Yeah, but I have played that bass line a lot. Yeah, do
it's
do
a
do do
gorgeous
do.
song.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's a great tune. Yeah,
Um,
it's a fun.
well, like I said, we're going to bounce around a little bit, but someone
Yeah,
else you
no problem.
worked with, I wanted to mention because I love her, um, Megan Mullally.
Oh yeah, yeah, Megan's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
we had a nice little run. We're still really good friends, but she's not performing that much anymore, music stuff, and she has this other thing called Nancy and Beth, and that was the most recent thing. But we had this thing called the Supreme Music Program, and I produced three records with her, and it was her music director for like I don't know, probably a dozen years, you know. And we wouldn't do a ton of stuff because she was super busy, you know, doing all her shows and all that stuff. But that was really cool because she's a great singer, and we would do our take on like you know whatever. She just really figure out songs that she liked. Like she, you know, big fan of Tom Waits and Randy Newman and you know Bertolt Brecht, whatever. And we just you know do our take on these cool classic songs, you know, Tin Pan Alley stuff or whatever, and we just figure out our little interpretations of these tunes. And it was a really fun gig to do, pretty eclectic. And Joe Berardi was the drummer on that, and he's great, man. He's an old friend of mine and such an amazing drummer, and he was in that band with me. And Stuart Mathis was the guitar player, and then we had this pedal steel player, Doug Livingston. That was super fun playing with Doug. He's an amazing pedal steel guy, and you know, and a few other violists would play with us, and we have a pretty eclectic little group. But that was sort of the core. Is like the three of us, guitar, drums, and piano, and viola and pedal steel, which is a pretty wild combo. And then we'd bring other people in here and there, and you know, whatever. We'd have a trumpet player sometimes and stuff. But it was fun, really fun playing with her. She's great.
and then of course, Megan did her version of Ruby's Arms by Tom Waits, which is, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
excellent.
that was a good one. Yeah, I love that version. Yeah, that we did. Yeah, that was super cool. Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, and you know, the cool thing about that whole thing was that you know, I'd never really played Sondheim before meeting her. You know what I mean? But it's like, oh my God, like this stuff's amazing. Like this is pretty fucking cool. Like I want to play, you know, I don't know, learn this and figure out a way to turn this inside out and stuff, you know. So it was cool. She turned me on to a lot of cool stuff, and we, you know, drove down some pretty cool roads together. Yeah, that was fun. Like, you know, because when she's you know, obviously a pretty famous person, so we would get to go play at jazz at Lincoln Center, you know, and you know, Kennedy Honors or whatever in Washington D.C. You know, so we do these crazy high profile gigs, you know, and that was pretty fun. There was this one we played at jazz at Lincoln Center, and Elaine Stritch was a friend of hers, and she's like an old broad, you know, she's amazing, man. She was like 80 something and just still sang like crazy and had these crazy legs, just this wild, like crazy old, like vaudeville woman. And I get to play a show with Elaine Stritch coming and guesting on a couple songs, and I'm accompanying Elaine Stritch singing. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. I'm just like a punk kid. So anyway, it was a really neat thing to get to do, you know, with her and get to play with some different people and meet a lot of cool folks and stuff. So, and we made three really cool records, you know, which I'm really proud of. Yeah, those were good records. Yeah, and it was
Great.
super fun.
I know, as you've sort of drifted into different situations, Jack Grisham has kind of, flown back in your orbit a few times.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I know you guys had a project in the 80s, late 80s ish, called the Men's Club.
yeah. That was super fun.
Yeah, I've
I
got that
love that.
cassette here somewhere actually
Oh, do
that
you? Oh,
yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, it's a shame nothing really happened with that. It was kind of like I'm trying to think what. So it was like somewhere in between Tender Fury and I don't know if I guess it's pre. I think it's post. It's a good. I think maybe it's pre Tender Fury. It was like, or but maybe no. I guess it was in the midst of Tender Fury before Joy Killer for sure. but yeah, we just like, man, let's work on some songs together. And I love those songs. I thought they were great, but it's just, it's hard. Sometimes it's just like, it was sort of just a recording project where I played everything and we did it. We didn't really play shows because we were just like, well, let's write some cool shit and see what we can get going. And couldn't really get anything going with it at that time. So it's like, whatever, it kind of didn't pan out, but it was super fun to do that. I love working with Jack because we always kind of figure out a way to do, make something cool. And like that one didn't really, get released or whatever, but it's nice that, people go back and find stuff and say, oh, cool, I want to, let me put that thing out or whatever. So it's fun that it's alive somehow,
Yeah, definitely. And we're gonna fast forward to, I guess it was 2003. You come back to TSOL
Uh,
for the Divided We Stand record.
yeah,
And
yeah.
TSOL had reformed, I guess it was around 99. Todd
Right.
sadly passed away, but it was
Right.
Roach, Ron, and Jack, a couple of
Yeah.
different drummers here or there. Um,
Mhm.
what led to you kind of rejoining the family 20 years after Beneath the Shadows?
Well, my kids were actually, it's funny because my boys were like 11, 12, something like that, just really kind of getting into music. They're all, both like, pretty committed to music at that point and really like wanting to check out all the bands and stuff. And they had this band called the Diffs, which I'm trying to think if they were already playing shows, but anyway, there was this show at the how we live up in Culver City, and so there was this show at the House of Blues, and T.S.O.L was playing. I was like, my boys really wanted to see them, and I, we're bump into the guys. Ron's son was playing basketball. Max was in the same basketball league, so I had bumped into Ron a few times. We had talked and stuff, and when they were like probably 6 or 7, and his son Zane. And so, and I'd see Jack around once in a while and stuff, but I was like, man, we should really go to the show. Like, we just go. So I took Max to see TSOL, and it was the Adolescents and TSOL. And so I think, what's the best place to have you know, keep you brought a friend, and so it's like I think Max was 10, or it's not. If it, let me see. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, well, let's go to the show. We'll get up on stage, and that'll be safe, So this dude, this story's pretty much out there, but this guy got shot in the face, like right next to Mike, Max and his friend, and it was just like blood spurting everywhere, and it was a really scandalous thing, and band getting sued and all that. So I figured, well, what better time to jump back in the band than when they're geting sued by everyone,
Right.
So, but no, it's nice to see them all and just like kind of reconnect. And it's like, damn, it'd be fun to play a little bit, and come and work on a record and do some stuff. And so that was kind of the beginning of being back playing with those guys. Because before that, it's like, man, I was raising a family and starting a business, and I was, scoring. I do music for, a lot of advertising and film and stuff like that. And so I was just deep in that world, I just wasn't really even, thinking about like what kind of music, what bands I'm into or whatever. It's just like raising kids, making a living, writing from. But then as my boys were getting older and they were digging into the old punk rock crates, because my wife is from Huntington Beach and she's an old punker, and they were digging into the old vinyl and loving all the bands and wanting to see all the old punk bands. And so it was like, and playing music themselves. And so it was like, okay, cool. Let's go see all these bands that you like and stuff. And TSO was one of them. And it was great to kind of reconnect
Awesome.
and do that. And then their first big show, the Diffs, was the Grisham for Governor show. Yeah, and they're playing for Max was 11 and Elvis was 12. The other kids were like in that same age, maybe like 13 at the most. And so yeah, they were playing the Fonda, playing for 2,000 people, opening up the show. So that was pretty fun.
That's
Yeah, and they played with us a bunch and played with all their idols, got to play with Circle Jerks and everybody, because that early 2000s, there was such a revival of bands, you
yeah.
know, kind of coming back around, you know what I mean? So they got to play with everybody, man. Even the Germs, because, the Germs were making that movie and they had Shane West singing. And so it's funny because the Diffs were like, the kid was Richie was really great. I mean, he was like a little Darby Crash, and it was funny because that guy Shane they wanted to play with the Diffs because Richie was the real deal. Like he was like this little Darby Crash kid, and he would watch him, man. Like you know what I mean? Because Shane was as an actor, but he was actually really good singing for the Germs. I thought like he did good, and it was kind of fun that they got to do that. And so the Diffs played with the Germs a lot, and like I said, Keith held out for a long time, but let them, they played with the Circle Jerks and just everybody, you know what I mean? Because they were cool. It was like, these like 11 and 12, 13-year-old kids who were playing like West Coast punk rock 78 to 81. You know what I mean? Like they weren't pop punk. That's when all the pop punk was going big, but they sounded like the Germs, man, and Dead Kennedys. And I don't know if it's worth checking out that Diffs record. It's really good. Yeah, it's really good. And they were young.
And your sons now are playing in Fiddler, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Max actually both of them. They both started Fiddler. Elvis is actually not in the band anymore, but he did 10 years and 3 records with them, and he's a really great composer, and he's living in Austin, and he writes music for This American Life for NPR, and he's scored Harry Dean Stanton's last film called Mr. Lucky, that which is a great film, by the way. And so he's I get it, because I kind of like my career got sidetracked, not sidetracked. I mean, it was by choice that I stopped being a touring musician and making record. And I wanted to score films and do that kind of stuff, And so and then I had little kids, and so it's like, okay, cool, I got to do this. So I understand, and that's where he's at. But the Fiddler is still going strong as a 3-piece. They're going to Europe in November, and they just got back from Florida, so they're doing a lot of touring this year and making records and doing all that stuff. And so that's my boys were in the Diffs, and then they started Fiddler and did that was like, well, it's like 12 years ago now, 13 maybe. So and Max is still, they're a 3-piece now. They didn't replace Elvis, but they do use they'll get like a touring guitar player to go tour with them when they go. So
More power
I'm
to
very proud of all
That's
they've
great.
done. Yeah. No, they're great, man. I love them. Yeah, I'm such a big fan. Yeah,
Cool.
and it's so good that music is in the family.
Totally. And as you just mentioned, you compose music for various media.
Right. Yeah, music for stuff, I like to say.
Stuff. Yeah. Um, and just to let the viewers in a little bit, who are some of the folks you've done work with in that capacity?
Well, I mean, Callaway Golf is one of my big clients, and I do a lot of their commercials, and lots of whatever cars, Toyota cars and beer, and whatever, just a lot of different that kind of ad stuff. But I also did the music for the last Chris Rock special. He had Selective Outrage. Yeah, I did the music for that. Like I do the open music for that, and I'm working on right now. I'm just finishing up the music for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2023 edition. I've done that for a couple of years, and so no, I'm great. It's really cool. I get to do a lot of neat stuff. A lot of work with a lot of cool people, and because a lot of times like the advertising thing is cool, because it's like you'd think like, oh yeah, you write jingles. Like, well, not really, man. It's like these are little 60-second films made by really talented directors, and I get to score those things. It's so. I mean, sometimes it's funny and whatever, comedy spots or whatever, but a lot of times there's these really cool like artistic bitchin' films that are branded too, but that's what pays for the production. So it's like, it's nice to get to jump around and do a lot of cool stuff with a lot of really, really talented people. There's a lot of amazing people in the advertising world, and so grateful to get to work with them on cool stuff.
Fantastic. Now that we've hit on a lot of your history leading up to the present, I wanted to talk about what's to come relatively soon. And that is, you're about to release an extraordinary solo EP. I mean, that's the only word I can put to it, Greg, truly.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, Joe.
You sent it to me last night, and I'm like, cool. I'm an editor and a freelance journalist by trade.
Mhm.
So I was working on a manuscript for someone last night, and I'm like, cool, I've got Greg's record. I'll put it on in the background. I'll work on this manuscript. 90 seconds in, I'm like, nope, no, work's done for tonight.
Oh wow, that's
I
awesome.
I need to be in this record for the rest of my evening. Um, this is where I, have to be objective and not emotional describing it. Um, it it really touched me, man.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
um, those who know me well know the significance of me saying this, and I'm saying this from the heart. Lyrically, in terms of composition, to me, it's Leonard Cohen, Tom Waits level.
Wow, thank you. Those
Um,
are two of my idols, but but to hit that mark is you know,
yeah,
wow, I appreciate
it's
that. That's very kind.
yeah. I mean, you can tell, it's done something to me. So
No,
thank
I
you
really,
for that.
that's awesome. No, that's so cool.
And
I really appreciate that.
this is a 6-song EP
Mhm.
called Medicine Man.
Yeah.
So the kind of give a little bit of a backstory on it. Why was now the right time to do a release under your own steam and under your own name?
Well, I part of it was, you Medicine Man was a song that I really, kind of felt like, man, I really should put. I mean, I write a lot. Music is just pours out of me all the time. I got thousands of pieces of music that nobody will ever hear or whatever. It's just, I mean, I sit at the piano and write something every day, but it's good to finish things. And lyrics aren't the easiest thing in the world for me to finish, but that song, I just was like, okay, I really got to finish this one. And then it was just a cool synchronicity with my friend Scott Fleming, who I work with on a lot of commercial stuff with, and he's a great director. And I played him, so I just kind of went out on a limb and said, you know what, I got this song, man, and I just was thinking it'd be cool to do a video for it, And he was like, dude, this is fucking amazing. Like, I love it. Like, let's do a video. Let's figure out a way to do it. And they're really, his company's called Merritt Andrew, and they got a lot of resources, and just we pulled in a lot of favors and made this video. And so knowing that that was coming, it was like, well, okay, that worked. Like, I should really, we're going to do this song. I guess I should finish a couple of other ones, and I just had some ideas fitting around. My problem is finishing things because I get so busy and I just got a lot of things unfinished, a million unfinished things. But it was like, finish a few things, will you please? Just finish a few things. And then the lyrics and singing and stuff, it's that those are harder to do. You really got to push myself to do that. But it was cool because it's like that was the spearhead, and it's like, okay, well, do a couple other, finish a couple more songs, man. Just finish them. I just got to, So that was cool. And then the instrumentals are a little bit easier because I mean I do that all day long, So, but I love those pieces too, and I feel like they're all part of the same world. But just finishing the other tunes and sort of having the knowing that we're doing this video, being the spearhead of it, and just go, okay, well, no, this should be an EP. I thought, well, maybe it should be an album, but it's like, I can't, that's a little bit over ambitious, and I just feel like maybe it's better to keep it tight, keep a few songs that are all in the same world and vein and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was kind of how it happened, and then my buddy Darren at DC Jams, we're putting out this Ignore Heroes soundtrack with DC Jams. They're doing vinyl for that, and that's pretty cool. And so I was like, wow, I should talk to Darren about maybe he'd like to put this out. We could do this together, because I get overwhelmed with some of that kind of stuff, because I'm always very busy, and it's just like to make time for that and to do spearhead these things and follow them all the way through is difficult, but that's what's cool about, like, somebody like him, because he's like, you know we're just somebody to partner with and kind of like help part of that thing of releasing a record, just have, so that was really cool of him to step up, and grateful to DC Jams for releasing it, and having a partner to do that stuff with. So yeah, it's kind of a cool synchronous thing the way it all worked out, and some of it's just like, I don't know who's going to want to hear my stupid little songs. Like, what do I really need to do this? You know what I mean? I mean, that's what goes through my head. But it just felt meaningful enough to say, well, you know what? I should just, it's, I heard something really cool and I've been living by it. It's actually, I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert. She has this book called Big Magic that I love. And it is very, meaningful to me and helped me through this process a lot. And she's just like, stop. You don't think about, I think about you liking it. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, that's all I want for you to have that reaction makes it worth putting a record out, and you can't think about like, well, what difference does it make and who's going to be, I know if I, I cry, I tear up when I'm working on stuff. And if that happens, it's like, okay, this is probably pretty good. Like, this is, somebody else will get this. It doesn't matter if everybody gets it. It doesn't matter. It's like, is this meaningful enough to put out so that it'll touch someone else maybe, or somebody will get something out of this? If the answer is yes, it's like, then that's enough. Like, then just maybe make it available to people. And I've been, you know, that's one of those things that we grapple with as artists. I think is just like, does it matter? Should I bother? You know what I mean? Some of those things are difficult, and you're also, look, I've played on a bunch of records, I've written a bunch of music, I've played on a bunch of songs and produced bands, all that stuff. But when you're doing it as a solo thing and having your voice out there and all that, it's a different animal, you know what I mean? And it's trippy, but it's important to do those things and step out in that way and say, you know what? I mean, yeah, it's so. And I've written songs, like I did this record with Dwayne Peters, which I really love too. Beautiful Tragedy, and I wrote a lot of those. I mean, a lot of those songs are written and I originally sung by me, but I love Dwayne and I love the way he sings. But I was afraid to do that on my own. But Dwayne was kind of my muse at that time, and I was like, man, I love this dude, and he's a beautiful tragedy. I mean, that's what he is. We're not really, I love him, and we haven't done a whole lot since because whatever, for whatever reason, but that was a cool record to do, and it was part of it was the fear of performing those songs myself, or whatever. But I'm glad that we did it, and I'm glad because like I said, I love working with Dwayne, and the ones that we wrote together I really love too. But there were a bunch that I wrote, and that all started off with me writing a song about his son who passed away, for him, and that's in that movie, the other F word.
Mhm.
And of course he was supposed to sing that song, you know what I mean? So it was just part of that process of like getting to that place. And sometimes these things take decades to happen. You do, I'm busy doing a film and commercials. Okay, I should make a record. It's all cool. Make a record with Dwayne, and Jack and I have made, I don't know, you're probably familiar with that West Coast Duke's record. That was one that we did together too.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I love that record too. So along the way, I'll do records with people, and then but with Dwayne, it was a lot of my songs that we did, and and then several that we wrote together. But it was kind of like, I got this thing I want to do, this Tom Waitsy kind of trip. And then so now I'm finally kind of like doing my version of that with where I'm kind of like, okay, we'll just get behind the mic and do this thing. You know what I mean? Just like put yourself out there. And it's been cool, and this response has been nice, and I'm really grateful to finally say, okay, well, here's some stuff.
Is it coming out digitally only, or is it going to be a physical release?
Just digital for now, and we may do vinyl later, but it's I don't know, we'll see how the demand goes. But it's nice to just to put it out there, and everybody's can hear it that way, and so it's if there is a demand, we'll do that too. That could be fun to do. But the T.S.O.L, the Ignore Heroes, will be on vinyl, so that'll be fun. We got a couple different, like an orange and a green vinyl release of that, and so that'll be fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
And going back to the Medicine Man EP, that comes out November 10th.
November 10th, yes, November 10th, and we'll have like a pre-sale thing or whatever, like the week before we'll start talking about it and all that stuff. So yeah,
Well,
but I'm excited for that to come out.
I'll tell you again, man, there are a very small number of records, that are kind of the, jewels in my life. These are the records that have been with me since I was a kid. They're going to be with me
Right,
when I'm buried. They'll be playing as I'm getting buried.
right.
Your EP is one of those records for me.
Wow, that's so awesome. Thank you. I
I've
really
had it for
appreciate that,
24
Joel.
hours, and I can't tell people enough what they're about to listen to. Take the evening off when you play it for the first time. It'll fuck you up, but
Right.
it'll do it in a beautiful way. And I really admire your honesty with the lyrics and what you're trying to say. And the instrumental pieces, Lost Ross is, there's just so much to take in with it. So I would really encourage anyone watching this video to get the EP when it comes out. And you mentioned Ignore Heroes, just to kind of, give a little bit more information on that. Ignore Heroes is the T.S.O.L documentary film that recently came out. And this vinyl release is the soundtrack that you composed for the film, right?
Yes.
And there's also, from what I understand, a T.S.O.L record coming out fairly soon on Kitten Robot Records, our buddies Kitten Robot. And that's a collection of singles and various unreleased pieces, things like that.
Yeah. That's super fun too. Yeah, we got that. That's gonna be neat because that's a bunch of just a bunch of singles from over the years of cover. There's several covers on there, and it's just nice to kind of gang up all those odds and sods, I guess, is who would call it, and just and put them all in one place. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm grateful that that's coming out because those are a lot of, a lot of times we've done several of those kind of the 7 inches with people and different labels and stuff or whatever, and it just they kind of it's great, but they it's nice to collect them all and say, well, here's a record with all that stuff, all those little bits and pieces in one place, so I'm looking forward to that. And the cool thing about the Ignore Heroes soundtrack too is that there, and I mentioned this to you yesterday, there is a we incorporated some dialogue from the film into the score too, which is cool because the thing is, like, when you're writing a score for film, it's like you're driven by especially with a documentary, so much dialogue, and the dialogue helps drive the music. And so those pieces do stand alone, but when you have a little bit of that dialogue that was from that section of the film that music was written for, then it kind of gives it some context, and it's kind of neat. So through the soundtrack, which is pretty much chronological, you do get these little snippets that tell the story of T.S.O.L, and tell some of the bits of those stories that are in the film. And so through the soundtrack, you get a little bit of that whole story, and you get the full story in the film. But it's kind of neat to have those little. If you've seen the film and then you're listening to that, it's like, oh yeah, shit, yeah. It kind of takes you on a little journey through the film, which is pretty neat. And that was fun to do with Jack. And it was fun to kind of go through the film and go, okay, well, what are we doing here? Like, what should we do with this record? How are we going to treat this? It's like, because we got all these pieces, and it was like, well, we could just do a soundtrack record, but we started thinking about it, and it was like neat to sort of figure out, like, wow, well, what could we do with some of that dialogue and stuff, and that was pretty mostly right where it was. But you can scoot stuff around, and you can play around with that a little bit, and there are some extended versions of one of the things that's a big part of that film is I'm doing these solo piano versions of T.S.O.L songs. And so I've extended some of those for the soundtrack. And then I think we'll probably at some point, I think we're going to do a solo record, a solo piano T.S.O.L record, which would be kind of fun. Because I really do like it. Those are such great songs, and some of which I didn't even play on the records. But it's like, just giving it just a different interpretation of those songs and taking those compositions into a different place is kind of fun, because I think look, like Weathered Statues. That's an amazing piece of music, and I'm grateful to get to go, wow, I want to reinterpret this song, for solo piano, and so that's kind of fun. That was one of our original ideas for the score. It can't carry, we realized that it couldn't really carry the whole film, and so we had to write some other stuff. But it is, for the transitions in between sections, it's really, I think it's pretty effective. And then I did some longer versions for the soundtrack, and then hopefully we'll do an even deeper dive into that world of solo T.S.O.L piano on a in 2004 or something. Maybe do an album of that stuff too. So that'll be fun.
Excellent. And of course, T.S.O.L has dates coming up. There are shows.
Yeah, we do. We're playing down in San Diego this Thursday, the 25th. Shoot, what's the day? What is Thursday?
26.
26th, yeah, and then the 27th with Tiger Army at the Hollywood Palladium, and we have a few out of sort of local but not actually LA shows in early December, and then we're playing the Regent on the 5th of January and the Observatory. I think it's on the 6th of January. So a couple big LA and Orange County shows coming up after the first of the year. So it's always fun. I mean, when you've played with somebody for 41 years already, it's really cool to get to still do that. I'm so blessed to be able to, play with those guys after all this time, I mean, it's not that many bands get to do that. I mean, more and more nowadays, especially from this scene, it's crazy how many bands are still at it. But I feel very fortunate to be able to still play with Jack, Ron, and Mike, who's getting better and hopefully back, sometime soon. But it's really a blessing, to get to still do that, and that people still care too. I mean, we're grateful for that too, because there's always another batch of kids that want to see all the bands, and then there's always, old timers who want to come see bands that they knew forever, and it's pretty great. Oh yeah, that's the other thing we are doing on the 19th or the 20th. I think it's the 20th of November. We're playing Darker Waves, which is this crazy
Right.
festival with all these, yeah, like Tears for Fears and Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, and X is playing too, and it just, I don't know, a lot of just a Devo. It's like this crazy bill, and somehow we're on it, so that's going to be really fun down at Huntington Beach.
We haven't even touched on the fact you play with X too.
Yeah, that's so much fun. Man, I love X so much, and I was been such a big fan since, like, I mean, I reviewed Los Angeles for my high school newspaper. I mean, I give it 4 stars. And so, I mean, I've been a fan of them since the beginning, and I've been seeing them forever. And then, to be when they do the album shows, they have me come and play and do the Ray Benzarek parts on those records, because when they do the album shows, they really like to have it be exactly like the record. And so to get to come and play with them is always a joy. And I really another really cool thing that I get to do once in a while. And it's not all the time, but whenever it's these they come along once in a while, it's like, oh wow, we're gonna do a run of album shows, and like we've done them where we do, like, we're going to Chicago and we're gonna do all 4 records, over 4 nights in a row or whatever, so that's been kind of really fun to get to do those over the years.
That's fantastic. Real quick before we wrap up, I'll tell you a TSOL story.
Excellent.
It was before you rejoined the band. Um, I was living in New Jersey at the time, and they had played someplace, I can't recall the name, but it's like the Jersey Shore. And
Yeah.
I went down to see the first time I ever saw TSOL. And I think Disappear was out. I think, yeah, it must have been because they were touring. So it
Yeah,
makes sense.
right, it makes sense.
And like halfway through, Jack's like, "All right, what do you guys want to hear?" I'm in the front row and I say, "Play Other Side." Oh,
That's
and
great.
he goes, "We don't have a keyboard player." And I go, "I'll hum the keyboard parts," as a joke. I
Right.
could see for a split second like the gears spinning in Jack's head. I'm thinking, "Oh shit, he thinks I'm serious." I'm like, "No, play 80 times instead." And they did
Yeah.
that instead.
That's
But
funny.
so it's cool that you're back, because I really wanted to hear that material. So
Oh, that's great. The Other Side. That's a good one, man. I mean, we don't play that one a ton, but that's what I'm always pushing for. But I did do a version of it for the soundtrack, so that's kind of cool. We got a little solo piano version or it's in the film at least. I think is it on the soundtrack? I'm not sure, but we did use that one in the movie. That was kind of fun to have a little. It's one of the interludes. That's a good
cool,
good choice, Joel.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost hummed it on stage with
Oh,
TSOL,
that's so
but I
cool.
didn't.
I love that.
Well, as we wrap up, Greg, it's been a pleasure and an honor talking to you about all this stuff. Where's the best place for people to find you online and learn more, and of course, get the Medicine Man EP when it comes out in a few days?
Well, my website is polygrovemusic.com. So that's a good place to sort of see, hear some of the stuff that I'm up to. And then, yeah, DC Jams is the label that's going to put it out. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff too, under my own name. Polygrove Music is my Instagram handle. And then I'm on Facebook too. And I post a lot about all that stuff, and LinkedIn too. And so, yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, the record's coming out on DC Jams on the 10th of November. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, it's going to be cool.
Excellent, man. Well, I'll put up all the links and such when the video goes up, and you
Oh,
know,
thank you. Oh,
let
appreciate
people
that.
know. And again, get this EP, guys. It's yeah. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you so much for it means a lot to me, man. It really does. Yeah. I'm glad really glad you like it and that it meant something to you. So that matters to me.
Yeah,
So it's
it really
really cool to do this. I love doing this, and you're a very good interviewer too. And it's just nice to be able to have a nice chat and just talk about stuff. It's been and you know about all the little nooks and crannies, so it's kind of fun to dive into all that stuff from the past.
cool. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and it's been a lot of fun. I hope this is the first of many conversations like this we're going to have. And
Mhm.
until we meet again, Greg, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Joel. I appreciate it.
Take care.